Hi, it's Paul here from selfoutforlife.com, and today I'm going to talk about why you get what you focus on. Now, everything that you've achieved in life so far is the result of your thoughts and focus of attention. And any disappointment, frustration and stress in your life is the result of not focusing on what you want. The same goes for a lack of money, a lack of love and feeling lonely. Now, most people, when trying to fix a problem, focus on what they don't want. They say things like, I don't want this pain in my body anymore. I don't want to be single anymore. Or I don't want to stay in this boring dead-end job anymore. Now, there's a great term, I think it came from Bob Proctor, which is what you think about, you bring about. So what you think about, you bring about. So whatever you focus your attention on, your mind will then do something to bring that about to the best of its ability. So whatever you focus on, you get, whether that's positive or negative. Now, why is that? Well, I first learnt this back in 1993 when I read a book called Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, and I'll put a link to this book in the description below. And he was talking in this book about the subconscious mind and how the subconscious mind doesn't judge, it can't make any decisions, it just takes in what you consciously think about. And so he was saying that if you consciously think about things that you don't have, then your subconscious mind has no choice but to give you more of that in your life. But if you start to think about and imagine and visualize the things you do want in your life, then your subconscious mind starts to work in that way. And I got this immediately. I mean, this made sense to me. I mean, it was profound. It was a profound insight for me at that time, but I got it immediately mentally. However, it's taken me a lifetime to apply it. It's something I have to constantly remind myself about, and I suspect that's true for you as well. Now, let's talk a little bit more about why that is the way it works. So if you think about how we learn, so any skill that we learn, and of course a brilliant example is learning to drive. You know, when you start learning to drive, it requires your full conscious attention and conscious awareness. Just dealing with maybe changing gears and steering and the road rules is all you can think about. There's no time to think about anything else. It's taking all your conscious awareness. And other examples in my life was learning to play the French horn when I was at school. That took a lot of conscious awareness, and I was very bad at it in the early days. And also learning to play golf, again, just getting everything right with the grip and the swing, and then you end up missing the ball completely. It requires your total conscious awareness. But the more I did these things, the more repetition, the more that would start to impress on my subconscious mind, and the more automatic it became. And particularly the more I did it right, the more that my unconscious mind remembered that. And if you think about it, it's impossible to learn any other way. We can only learn by repetition. That's the way the brain learns. So when you bear that in mind, anything that we repeatedly say to ourselves, the unconscious mind is going to pick up on it, because it's just the way that we learn as humans. So I'm now going to cover what the subconscious mind understands. Now, the subconscious mind doesn't really understand words. It understands much more concepts, ideas and feelings. So it gets the feelings behind certain words. It gets the feelings behind the sentences much more than the sentences themselves. So I'm going to give you an example of how this works. I'm going to repeat some short phrases now, and I'm going to pause after each one because I'd like you to repeat them to yourself, either silently or out loud as you're watching this video. So here goes. I don't want to get cancer. I don't want to get made redundant. I don't want to get rejected. Now, what did you notice when you repeated those words, those phrases? You probably will have noticed, very, very subtly perhaps, but you would have probably noticed a certain feeling on a certain word, one of the negative words. So I'm guessing possibly the word cancer, redundant and rejected. So what happens is that your unconscious mind comes up with a feeling for a split second when it hears that word. And most people think the unconscious mind is picking up on the word itself, but actually it's picking up on that feeling. So to really get the importance of focusing on what you want, it's good to understand a little bit about neuroplasticity. So the old thinking, probably 40 years ago or so now, was that the brain is fixed, it's hardwired, and it doesn't change much in someone's lifetime. Today's thinking is very different. It's that the brain is flexible, it can change, it's malleable, it's plastic. And this is where the term neuroplasticity came from, and especially the term experience-dependent neuroplasticity, which is what I'm going to talk about a little bit now. So when you have an experience, any experience, including watching this video, your neurons, which are basically your brain cells, will switch on and fire. Then what happens is once those neurons fire, synapses are created, and synapses are basically the connections between different neurons. Now we have 100 billion neurons that are ready to act at any point in time, but not all of those will switch on and fire. So the neurons or brain cells that fire and make connections, which we now know as synapses, depends on the experiences that we're having. So what we are thinking, seeing, sensing and doing. And the more connected the neurons are, the stronger that area of the brain becomes and the more effective and responsive it will be. And the neurons that don't get used will wither and die. Now, why is that? Well, our head and our brain are a finite size. We can only fit so many neurons and so many synapses and connections in our brain. So our brain has no alternative but to let some of those neurons wither and die, the ones that we don't use. So our brain reserves space for those neurons or brain cells that are needed the most. And whenever we have an experience, it either creates new connections, so new synapses, or it strengthens existing ones. And when we have the same experience many times, those neurons get elevated in importance and eventually become part of our long-term memory, which is why we never forget how to ride a bike or drive a car. So every experience you have alters the physical structure of your brain. So all the things you do, the people you hang out with, every feeling, thought and automatic experience influences the wiring in your brain to make you who you are now and who you want to be in the future. So that's how your brain works, that's how neuroplasticity works. If you didn't get that the first time, then feel free to rewind this video back and watch this bit again. You might have to watch it several times to really get it. Also, there'll be a link to the blog post below this video, so reading might help as well. So what do most people do? Well, most people are not deliberate or conscious about what they focus on. Instead, they let other people and experiences shape their brains automatically. And that can happen in a positive or a negative way. So if you let your mind settle on self-criticism, self-loathing, pain, stress, worry, fear, guilt, regret, then that's going to shape your brain over time to give you more of the same experiences. You then become more vulnerable to worry, depression and anxiety. So it's something that happens over time. So what to do instead? And what you really need to do is to start changing the meaning of situations so that they can be more positive. And when you do that, the brain strengthens connections around resilience, optimism, gratitude, positive emotion and positive self-esteem. And if you can hold any positive experience for 20 seconds minimum, that is long enough for those neurons to start firing and for those new connections or synapses to be formed. So just thinking about one thing to the exclusion of all others, a positive thing, for just 20 seconds is enough to start getting the brain to start reshaping itself, create those new connections, create those new synapses, and start to make a change that's automatic and unconscious. So when you start focusing more on what you want, you'll still find that you get some thoughts about what you don't want. It's natural. You know, I get negative thoughts as well. And the trick really is to just pay less attention to them. You can't stop all negative thoughts from appearing, but you can start to pay less attention to them. And a few ways to do that is to mentally say the word cancel, delete, or thanks for sharing whenever you hear or notice yourself having a negative thought. That's a really good one. Another thing you can do is ask yourself the question, do I want more of that? So when you're thinking of those thoughts, just say, do I want more of that? And the answer will probably be no. Another great way is to practice intentional living. So what's this? Intentional living is basically where each time you go into a different situation, you ask yourself, what do I want? So let's give you some examples. You are catching the train to work. So just before you get on the train, you ask yourself, what do I want? The answer could be, I want to get a seat on the train and I want it to arrive on time. So you then get into the office and you have a meeting at 10 o'clock. So you ask yourself, what do I want from this meeting? The answer might be, I want to express my point clearly and other people will understand and appreciate what I have to say. You might then have a report you need to do a little bit later in the morning. So you ask yourself, what do I want? Well, I want this report to be easy. I want it to be easy to come up with the right words, and I want to be able to do it quickly, and I want to feel relaxed while I'm doing it. You might meet someone for lunch. So you ask, what do I want? I want to have an enjoyable experience with this person, catch up, have a few laughs, and share some nice common experiences. And you just go through the day. Each time something significant happens, just ask yourself, what do I want? So that's another great way. Another thing is to use this affirmation, which is, I am so happy and grateful that, then enter your desired outcome, is getting closer and closer to being in my life. Okay, so some examples could be, I'm so happy and grateful that earning $5,000 a month passive income is getting closer and closer to being in my life. Or I am so happy and grateful that reducing my weight to 60 kilos is getting closer and closer to being in my life. And when you do that, focus on the positive feelings. That's really important. So focus on those positive feelings as you do that. So to finish this video, I'd like to talk a little bit about mind-body medicine. So the idea with mind-body medicine is that your mind, which is your consciousness and your thoughts, influences your brain, that physical matter in your head, which influences your body. And the simple rule behind mind-body medicine is that you tend to get more of what you focus on. So you tend to get more of what you focus on. So we've been talking about this already. So if you focus on illness and disease, you tend to get more of that. If you focus on health and healing, then you tend to get more of that too. And there's been many studies that have shown that people that have healed successfully, sometimes from, life-changing diseases like cancer, have done it because they've focused on healing, they've focused on health, they've focused on what they want. And it's very possible for the brain to find another way, and you can influence that way by your thoughts, feelings, emotions, and attitudes. So to really illustrate how the mind affects the body, I want to share with you a story about Milton Erickson. He was the father of modern hypnotherapy, and at the age of 17 he contracted polio and became so severely paralyzed that doctors thought he would die. Now what he started to do was he started to recall body memories. He started to recall memories of the body activity and the movement that he used to have. And he did that over and over again. By concentrating on these memories, he slowly learned to tweak his muscles and began to regain control over parts of his body. And as he kept doing that, eventually he was able to talk again and move his hands around. However, he was still unable to walk. So what he decided to do was embark on a grueling 1,000-mile canoe trip with just a few dollars. And after he'd done that trip, he was able to walk with a cane. So this was back in 1918, so long before neuroplasticity was even thought of as a word, never mind the buzzword that it is today. But it showed that the brain can find another way. So when something happens in the body, the brain will find another way, but only if you focus on what you want. So I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, please give it a like, please give it a thumbs up, and do leave a comment below. Let me know about your experience of focusing on what you want, or even focusing on what you don't want. And do subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and click the bell notification. That way you will always be notified whenever I release future videos. And go and check out my website, that's selfhelpforlife.com. On my website you will find the written versions to many of these videos, and also a link to my podcast and also to social media as well. So I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. This was a bit technical than most of the ones I do, but I hope you still enjoyed it anyway. I hope you really realize now the importance of focusing on what you want. And I look forward to sharing more great content with you very soon. Bye for now.